Collin County authorities confirm a woman's body found last night in Grand Prairie was that of missing McKinney woman Kayla Kelley.
Kelley and Ferguson were dating, but he gave her a fake name and told her he wasn't married. She'd only recently learned he was.
First responders called the police immediately. When the police arrived, they found 33-year-old Kayla Kelley, who by the looks of it was suffocated to her death. As shocking as that sounded, there was even more troubling information.
Make no mistake, you murder a 33-year-old young lady and put her in a shallow grave, we're going to seek justice.
This is the story of Kayla Kelley. This story takes us to McKinney, Texas, a city known for its peaceful streets and a crime rate below the national average. With violent and property crimes well under control, residents have long felt secure in their community, but that sense of safety was upended when Kayla Kelley, a woman well loved by those who knew her, became the center of an event so tragic and unexpected that it left the entire city searching for answers. Kayla was a woman with quite a controversial childhood. She grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, and lived with her parents. But her parents weren't much of an example. Her parents were addicted to hard substances and, like most people with this problem, ended up in jail, which prompted Kayla to live with relatives. And this had a great impact on her life. However, this didn't deter Kayla, who was determined to get the best out of the situation. She made it a point of duty to excel in school, after which she would get a job and a husband and a kid. Quite the plan, you may think, but it was achievable only with work that Kayla was ready to put in. After graduating high school in 2007, Kayla's journey was just beginning. She earned her degree in Management Information Systems from Athens State University, setting the stage for her future success. Not stopping there, she leveled up her expertise with a master's in business administration, specializing in project management from the Florida Institute of Technology in 2020, proving that she was a force to be reckoned with. However, she was just getting started. After graduating, Kayla's ambition set her sights high. One opportunity stood out: a role at Raytheon's new facility near McKinney, Texas. Determined to seize it, she landed the job in 2021 and relocated without hesitation. From day one, Kayla's dedication was undeniable, propelling her rapidly up the ranks to management. Her quick rise wasn't just about hard work, it was her vibrant spirit and open heart that drew people in. But amid it all, there was one thing Kayla loved above all else. It was her dog, named Chile.
Chili. Look at me.
This didn't mean that Kayla literally put Chile above everyone and everything. In fact, she loved shopping for herself and others. However, above all this, Kayla wished to shop for someone other than herself or just random friends. She hoped to someday shop for the man she called her husband and her child. That's right, Kayla was obsessed with the thought of getting a husband and giving birth to a child, that it would push her to make a lifelong mistake. During summer sometime in 2022, Kayla met a man online with the name of Kevin Brown. The man was everything she had hoped for, so little wonder why she fell in love with him in no time. Kayla could see her biggest dream gradually coming true. In fact, she had gotten so overwhelmed with this fact that it led her to tell Kevin about it. Little did she know that this would signal the beginning of her endless woes. Kevin seemed all in, serious enough to take Kayla ring shopping, but then, out of nowhere, his behavior shifted. Inconsistencies piled up, leaving Kayla desperate for answers. Blinded by love, she hadn't noticed the glaring red flags until it was too late. The man she thought she knew was a stranger, and soon, the truth about Kevin would unravel, accompanied with grave consequences. However, her intuition was troubled, leading her to search for answers from little resources such as his wallet, but there was nothing enough to implicate him other than his cash. But this, in its own, was suspicious because usually people would have their driver's license or some form of identification with them, especially in their wallets. It was at this moment that Kayla realized she hadn't seen any form of ID of Kevin, not even by mistake. But Kaylin was a patient woman. Her suspicions rose when she discovered that Kevin moved around with only cash and no credit cards. Initially, she paid no attention to this, but with tensions rising, every detail became really important. And soon, Kayla would get even more proof backing her suspicion. One seemingly ordinary day, Kevin and Kayla were driving when police officers pulled them over. as routine as it seemed. The officers asked Kevin for his ID. Kayla, curious and expectant, watched closely. But when Kevin finally handed over his ID, her anticipation turned to shock. She watched, bewildered, as Kevin produced his ID from under the seat of the vehicle, but as a woman with a brain, she was composed and instantly had a plan. He was without flaws on that day, so the officers let him go. On another seemingly ordinary day, Kevin and Kayla were on the road when Kevin stopped to refuel the car. As he stepped out to pump gas, Kayla spotted her opportunity, and she wasn't about to let it slip. Keeping her eyes locked on Kevin to avoid suspicion, Kayla discreetly reached beneath his seat and pulled out his registration and paperwork. Her heart raced as her eyes scanned the documents, and what she discovered left her utterly stunned. His name wasn't even Kevin Brown, as earlier presented by him, but O'Caster Ferguson. Still, in shock but not devoid of her composure, Kayla quickly took photos of this discovery and put the papers back where they belonged. While for some this was a discovery worth acting upon, to Kayla, it was the beginning of a long investigative process. In the days that followed, Kayla spent hours digging into the name O'Caster Ferguson. Her gut feeling had been spot on. What she discovered was more than just a name. It was a shocking revelation waiting to be exposed. It was then that Kayla discovered the devastating truth. O'Caster Ferguson was a married man. Her heart shattered, but in that moment of betrayal, Kayla made a decision. A choice that, unbeknownst to her, would set the stage for the tragedy that lay ahead. She decided to still accept him and was still ready to get married to him, even if it meant her becoming his second wife. And this, she wasn't scared to tell her cousin, identified as Irish Anderson. However, Kayla wasn't done digging. In the early hours of January 10th, 2023, while Ferguson was sleeping, Kayla carefully took his phone from his pouch and meticulously using his thumb to access it, she found his wife's phone number and 3 other women he was also seeing. Upset by the fact that he could do her like that, she took all their numbers with hopes of exposing him to them all. First of all, she sent a message to the 3 women telling them that Ferguson had a wife, after which she sent a not-so-clear message to Ferguson's wife asking for a meetup in order to expose something to her, while not clearly stating what she wanted to expose. After doing this, she woke Ferguson up, and with the phone still in her hand, began shouting at him, telling him she knew all about his deceit and that she was going to expose him. Ferguson, visibly angry, asked for his phone, and she angrily threw it at him. Even though Ferguson had been exposed, being a married man, he still had some sort of advantage due to the fact that his wife wasn't clearly aware yet of what was going on. It was here that Ferguson made the ultimate decision, one that would silence Kayla for good. Later that day, Ferguson proposed a meeting, framing it as a chance to mend their fractured relationship. Torn between anger at his betrayal and a lingering hope to salvage what they had, Kayla agreed. Despite everything she had uncovered, a sliver of trust in him led her to step into his car. But once inside, the atmosphere shifted. The conversation quickly spiraled into a heated confrontation, unraveling into a heartbreaking tragedy that would change everything. In a secluded area, Ferguson attacked Kayla, using force to overpower her. The struggle was quick but intense, and Kayla, tragically, lost her life due to suffocation. After the murder, Ferguson tried to hide what he had done. He buried Kayla's body in a shallow grave near his home in Grand Prairie, Texas. To cover his tracks further, he burned her car, hoping to erase any evidence. However, these actions only made the investigation stronger and would eventually lead to his arrest. After murdering Kayla, Ferguson took several calculated steps to cover his tracks and manipulate the situation to his advantage. Following the tragic confrontation that led to her death, he immediately set about destroying evidence. One of his first actions was to burn Kayla's car on January 12th, intending to eliminate any forensic evidence that could link him to her disappearance. The vehicle was found burned beyond recognition, and investigators determined that the fire was intentionally set, indicating premeditation. Ferguson further attempted to obscure his involvement by purchasing items necessary for the arson, including a lighter and a gas can, on the same day that he killed Kayla. This purchase would later serve as crucial evidence against him. To create an alibi, he claimed that Kayla had dropped him off at work on the morning of her murder and did not return as planned. However, investigators quickly debunked this narrative through cell phone data that tracked his movements, revealing he had been in the vicinity of both the burned car and the wooded area where Kelly's body was ultimately discovered.
Few seem to travel down this dead-end dirt county road in Frisco. It's becoming a dumping ground, sheltered on either side by utility equipment and woods. And it is on this road where court documents say 32-year-old Ocastra Ferguson dumped Kayla Kelley's vehicle and set it on fire. Court records obtained by Fox 4 Friday for the arson charge say Ferguson obtained a lighter and a gas can on January 10, 2023 during the day. A separate set of court records say Kelley's phone was last used that night at 6:59 p.m. The last location of her phone was in the area of Ferguson's work in the Dallas area. Records say he stated he was with Kelley on January 10th and went to her residence after she picked him up from work around 11 o'clock. Even though phone records suggest he went to his residence in Grand Prairie before heading to Kelley's. Records then say Ferguson got a ride home from a rideshare service back to his home in Grand Prairie. A witness eventually reported the burned vehicle was found on the 12th, one day after Kelley was reported missing.
In a bid to manipulate the situation further, Ferguson sent Kayla messages after her death that he knew she would be unable to respond to. This tactic was likely intended to maintain control over the narrative surrounding their relationship and create confusion about her whereabouts. He also created a ride-sharing account to distance himself from the scene of the crime, using this service to travel from Frisco back to Grand Prairie on January 11th, which helped him establish a narrative that he was not present when Kayla went missing. As investigators pieced together the timeline of events, they utilized cell phone data to map Ferguson's movements before and after Kayla's murder. This data traced him to key locations connected to both Kayla's vehicle and the site where her body was buried in a shallow grave less than half a mile from his home. Despite his attempts at manipulation and evasion, his actions ultimately led law enforcement directly back to him, revealing the tragic truth behind Kayla's disappearance. The evidence against Ferguson mounted as police analyzed his phone records. They discovered that he had sent text messages to other women around the time of Kayla's murder, indicating he was aware of her threats to expose him. This behavior suggested a level of manipulation and premeditation on his part. During police interviews, Ferguson initially claimed that Kayla had dropped him off at work, but later changed his story multiple times, which raised further suspicions.
We believe the person responsible for her death is in custody. He's currently locked up in our detention facility, charged with kidnapping.
On May 21st, 2024, Ferguson's trial began, with prosecutors presenting a compelling case against him. They detailed how his actions following Kayla's death, such as burning her car and attempting to create an alibi, were critical in leading investigators directly to him. The testimony included insights into their relationship dynamics and Kayla's determination to confront Ferguson about his lies. After deliberating for about an hour, the jury found Ferguson guilty of murder on May 23, 2024. He was sentenced to life in prison for killing Kayla and burying her body in a shallow grave. The trial underscored the tragic circumstances surrounding her death and highlighted the consequences of deception within their relationship. Kayla's death left her family and the community in deep shock.
This is very frightening that I was following this story since it happened, and for the finish line to be, just right here in my front door, it's very frightening, and it's just seems unreal right now.
In sorrow, her loved ones mourned the loss of a woman who was not only devoted to her children, but also passionate about her career.
From one sister to another sister, I wanted I wanted to know that she was not alone, that we are going to remember her.
Friends remembered her as kind-hearted and strong, deeply touched by the positive impact she had on everyone around her. The community came together, holding vigils and memorials in Kayla's honor. These gatherings helped raise awareness about domestic violence and the dangers of deceptive relationships. Many questioned how such a tragedy could have happened, sparking conversations about the subtle signs of manipulation and abuse that often go unnoticed. As the trial ended, families and friends faced the painful reality of their loss while working to create change. Reflecting on Kayla's story, a powerful question emerged. How can we better support people in recognizing and escaping toxic relationships before it's too late? And what red flags should we watch for in relationships to avoid another tragedy like Kayla's? While we are still reflecting on that, we head over to New Orleans, where a woman was killed in the most brutal way. Worse still, in broad daylight.
When a young man can walk with a machine gun, shoot a woman, and just walk around the apartment building, then come back and finish it off, that's bold. That's bold. He don't give a damn.
On June 27, 2022, a woman's body was found lying next to her vehicle. The woman was 48-year-old Cassandra Jones, a mother of 3. When police arrived, they found a woman with bullet wounds on her. But that was not all. The officers would soon find out they had more shocking discoveries awaiting them. This was one case that took everyone who heard it by storm, and it takes us all the way to New Orleans, a city that has historically struggled with high crime rates. New Orleans has seen recent improvements, with a reduction in murders and overall crime. Despite this progress, violent incidents, such as shootings during events like parades, still occur. Authorities are continuing efforts to enhance public safety. However, in the case of 48-year-old Cassandra Jones, even the police were at risk of being executed. Cassandra Jones, a 48-year-old mother and grandmother, was born and raised in Mississippi. She graduated from Vicksburg High School, where she stood out not only for her academic attributes, but also for being a cheerleader and a track athlete, 2 of her most notable achievements. After high school, Cassandra attended Hines Community College before setting out for New Orleans in search of a better life. Once there, she landed a job as a deputy clerk at an Orleans parish office, and life seemed to be on the right track. Like many women seeking companionship, Cassandra eventually met a man. While this might seem like an ordinary chapter in anyone's life, it would soon become a decision she'd tragically wish she had avoided. Cassandra met a man by the name of B.J. Brown. He was 32 years old, and soon the pair got a relationship going. However, like every normal relationship, they got off to a good start, but after approximately a year of dating, the relationship began to have visible cracks. I use the word visible cracks because what Cassandra started going through was totally unacceptable. Cassandra, once the life of the party and a role model to her friends, became withdrawn and reserved, a shadow of her former self. The change was rooted in the trauma she endured from relentless physical and emotional abuse. However, she didn't suffer in silence for long. On May 4th, 2022, Cassandra filed a restraining order in Orleans Criminal District Court, detailing alarming accounts of the abuse she had faced. The details involved punching, choking, kicking, threats of bodily harm, and financial intimidation. However, it didn't end there. In her restraining order, Cassandra recounted a chilling incident from April 27, 2022, around 3:30 a.m. Brown had arrived at her home, uninvited, sparking an argument. Exhausted and needing rest for work later that morning, Cassandra tried to de-escalate by dismissively telling him to save his drama for the next woman he might date. Her words enraged Brown, who pulled out a belt and began striking her with it. The report revealed this wasn't an isolated event. Such abuse had become a disturbing pattern in their relationship, to the point that he even knocked out her teeth in the past. And one time, when she questioned him about a female he was in contact with, he punched her, threw her on the ground, and stomped on her. It didn't end there. After Cassandra called 911, Brown fled by jumping from the second-floor balcony. Yet, she knew he wasn't done. He had left behind his phone and car keys. As she predicted, he returned. Cassandra threw his phone out the third-story window, but refused to toss the car keys, claiming they weren't his. Furious, Brown somehow managed to reach her and attempted to suffocate her with a pillow. The incident provided enough evidence to put Brown behind bars for a long time, but Cassandra decided against pressing charges. She told authorities she just wanted him to move on and be with someone else, so long as he left her alone.
We spoke about it. I gave her my full support. I encouraged her to go through with it, and I believe she decided not to go through with it.
Her employer says Jones filed a temporary protective order against Brown, but later decided to drop it.
It is the most common type of case in criminal court where a victim will recant, or in other words, will want to come forward, will want to press charges, will want to have the system involved, and then will sort of take that back.
Tragically, this decision would cost her the chance to ever regret it. On the morning of June 27, 2022, Cassandra was leaving her home for work when tragedy struck. While in the 1400 block of Iberville Street, Brown approached her. For reasons unclear, she was already on the ground when he arrived armed with an assault rifle. Without hesitation, he shot her execution style, striking her twice in the back. The attack was sudden, brutal, and unfolded in plain view of bystanders, leaving a horrific scene of violence in its wake. The shooting was captured on cell phone video, which later circulated on social media, drawing significant attention to the incident.
When a young man can walk with a machine gun, shoot a woman, and just walk around the apartment building, then come back and finish it off, that's bold. That's bold. He don't give a damn.
After the shooting, Brown fled the scene, leading to a manhunt as law enforcement sought to apprehend him. Emergency services took Cassandra to the University Medical Hospital, where she was pronounced dead after a few hours. In no time, a warrant was obtained for Brown's arrest on second-degree murder charges. But by this time, Brown had gone far away from New Orleans, and the police were about to find his whereabouts in another controversial manner. On July 1st, 2022, while in Dickson County, Tennessee, Brown was stopped on a routine traffic stop, one where he engaged in a shootout with police officers. During this encounter, he shot an officer multiple times, resulting in serious injuries. The officer was hospitalized but survived the attack.
No mistake whatsoever. This was an ambush on an officer. Rest assured, we will not rest until he's captured, justice is served, whether it be by a jury or Jesus.
Brown, on the other hand, ran into the woods, abandoning his vehicle in the process. Following the incident, a blue alert was issued and a manhunt ensued for Brown, who had become a fugitive after the shooting. He was eventually apprehended and charged with multiple offenses, including attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. In January 2024, the trial of B.J. Brown commenced in Tennessee, focusing on the attempted murder of a police officer during a violent confrontation that occurred shortly after he fled New Orleans following the murder of Cassandra. The trial garnered significant media attention due to the severity of the charges and the circumstances surrounding both incidents.
The black woman and someone being gunned down in our city, totally unacceptable. The apprehension of Mr. Brown, something that we absolutely celebrate.
During the trial, prosecutors presented compelling evidence against Brown, including eyewitness testimonies from officers who were present during the shootout. They described the chaotic scene and detailed how Brown opened fire on them when they attempted to apprehend him. Their accounts painted a vivid picture of the danger posed by Brown. Additionally, surveillance footage from the area where the shooting occurred was introduced, showing Brown's actions during the encounter with law enforcement. The prosecution also highlighted Brown's extensive criminal background, which included multiple arrests and convictions, underscoring his propensity for violence and disregard for the law. Forensic evidence, including ballistics analysis, linked the firearm used in the attack on the officers to Brown, further solidifying the case against him. After several days of testimony and deliberation, the jury found Brown guilty on multiple counts, including attempted first-degree murder for shooting at a law enforcement officer with intent to kill, possession of a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony for using a firearm while committing a violent crime, and unlawful possession of a firearm given his prior criminal record, which prohibited him from legally possessing firearms. The jury's verdict was delivered on January 25, 2024, concluding that there was sufficient evidence to convict Brown of these serious charges. On March 26, 2024, Brown was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentencing hearing was attended by law enforcement officials and community members who had followed the case closely. Orleans District Attorney Jason Williams expressed frustration that justice for Cassandra remained unfulfilled since Brown would not face charges for her murder.
Although he was convicted of a crime elsewhere, I wanted to get him back here in Orleans Parish for us to do what we could for Mrs. Jones' family.
He emphasized that while Brown was being held accountable for his actions in Tennessee, there was still an unresolved aspect regarding Cassandra's death. Aaron Police Chief Mark Moore remarked on the importance of justice for the injured officer and his family, but acknowledged that it was bittersweet knowing that Brown would not be prosecuted for Cassandra's murder.
And we kept our word, and fortunately it was It occurred pretty quick.
And if you're wondering why he wasn't prosecuted for the murder of Cassandra, murder prosecutions take time due to the need for thorough investigations, evidence analysis, and preparation by both the prosecution and defense. Legal processes, pretrial hearings, and court schedules also cause delays. As a result, a murder case may take anywhere from several months to a few years to reach a resolution. However, this wasn't the reason he never got to face the charges. Before he could stand trial for Cassandra's murder, Brown died in prison on November 19, 2024. His death occurred under circumstances that did not indicate foul play, but the exact cause was not immediately disclosed. This development left unresolved the legal proceedings concerning Cassandra's murder, preventing her family from achieving closure through a trial against Brown for his actions that led to her tragic death. The immediate community reaction to the news of Brown's death in prison was one of mixed emotions.
It's awful. It shouldn't happen. That type of stuff shouldn't happen in broad daylight in a normal community, you know?
Particularly among Cassandra's family and friends. After the announcement on November 19, 2024, her daughters expressed feelings of frustration and disappointment that Brown would not face trial for their mother's murder.
We couldn't believe of all the things that could possibly happen, even knowing the type of person he was, that he would go this far to do something so brutal.
They emphasized that while they were relieved he would not harm anyone else, they felt robbed of the opportunity for justice and closure through a court trial. Community members also voiced their concerns about the systemic failures that allowed domestic violence escalate to such tragic outcomes.
She was part of the fabric of New Orleans. She was a valued employee of my staff and our team. And all that's gone.
The situation highlighted the urgent need for better protective measures for victims of domestic violence. Many in the community mourned Cassandra's loss and called for increased awareness and support for those facing similar situations, reflecting a desire for change in how such cases are handled by law enforcement and the judicial system. The tragic story of Cassandra Jones highlights the urgent need to address domestic violence and the systemic failures that can leave victims unprotected. Her life, filled with love for her children, was cut short in a senseless act of violence, leaving her community struggling with grief and outrage. As we reflect on this case, we must ask ourselves, what can we do to ensure that victims of domestic violence receive the protection they desperately need? How can we hold systems accountable to prevent such tragedies from happening again? Cassandra's story is a call to action for all of us. Let's advocate for change and create a future where every individual is safe from harm. Thank you for watching yet another episode of Wednesday Crime Channel. Here are some other shocking stories we've covered on this channel, and they're even more disturbing than what you just watched. I hope you learned something from them. If you like the way we present these stories, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. See you in the next one.